A continuation and ultimate end for one of the most beloved TV series with one of the largest cult followings in Firefly. 2005 sci-fi Joss Whedon helmed Serenity truly was one of the best send-offs to a beloved franchise that was canceled way too soon. Serenity, like Firefly, stars Nathan Fillion, Gina Torres, Alan Tudyk, Marina Baccarin, Adam Baldwin, Jewel Staite, Sean Maher, Summer Glau, Ron Glass, Chiwetel Ejiofor, and so many more. Let's take a quick look.
Hands and knees and head bowed down. Everybody down. This is a robbery, but what we're after is not yours. Listen up. We're coming down to empty that vault.
You have to give me your authorization password. Okay. This is the captain. We may experience some slight turbulence and then explode.
I don't want to explode.
So here's us, on the raggedy edge. Come a day, there won't be room for naughty men like us to slip about at all. I'm taking your sister under my protection here.
She's conditioned for combat. She's a creature of extraordinary grace.
The only people she's a threat to is us on this boat.
River, do you want to stay with them?
It isn't safe for them.
Every minute you keep her from me, more people will die.
You think I care?
Of course you can. The Alliance has gone to enormous trouble to find a little friend. You'll know what it is you're carrying.
Somebody say hell yeah!
Do you know that girl?
I really don't.
It's worse than you know.
It usually is.
So where's it writ that we gotta lay down our lives for her?
You want to run this ship?
Yes.
Well, you can't. No more running. I aim to misbehave.
It's a fair bet the Alliance knows what's coming.
No, they're not going to see this coming.
Do you really think any of us are going to get through this?
Well, I might.
This is gonna get pretty interesting.
Define interesting.
Oh God, we're all gonna die?
No,
Yes.
no.
Yes.
The universe is going to know the truth.
You willing to die for that?
I am.
So Serenity takes off where the last episode of Firefly leaves off, with the crew of Serenity helmed by Captain Malcolm Reynolds, or Mal, First Mate Zoe Washburn, and the rest of the crew, including the two newest members, Dr. Simon Tam and River Tam, continue their journeys of being space mercenaries. So this film starts out with a little more background on River. Her being captured by the Alliance, all we know is that she is a very important person, and her brother Simon breaking her out. Get the introduction to our newest big bad, Chiwetel Ejiofor's character, the Operative, and showing that the film is really setting the tone and setting some early stakes and showing that it is quite different from its TV show counterpart. Crew of the Serenity picks up odd jobs, taking robberies for hire, kidnappings, but they have never been the same since picking up the mysterious doctor and his even more mysterious 17-year-old sister, River. Welcome back to a very special episode of the Cult of Films. My name is Jon Dunning, your host, and tonight I am joined by a very special brown coat, and that is Drew Bentley. For the next 60 minutes or so, Drew and I are going to aim to misbehave and take you on a very shiny adventure.
Yeah, they try and obviously, because they fought against the Alliance in the war, there's no love lost there, so they just try and stay off the radar. They're smugglers, but like you said, they'll just take a robbery if that's the only job they can get. Sometimes they just transfer stuff or transport. But yeah, when they get these people, it's like they have no backstory, and then it kind of comes to light pretty fast in the show. And I think that's pretty much the opening of the movie, is showing the escape of Summer, who's being held by the Alliance. So.
And it's like I said, it does pick up from where the show leaves off, kind of. But since it it never really had a last episode of that first season. It does feel a little disjointed. So just picking up from the beginning, you see that Summer is under, and this is going to be full spoilers. This movie came out in 2005, but this is, we just have to talk about it because it was such a phenomenon. But the movie picks up with Summer being captured and kind of mentally tortured, and her brother, Dr. Simon, breaking her out, getting them both back on the Serenity, and then, kind of resuming the status quo until Summer really starts tripping out.
Yeah, she's, they were messing with her brain, supposed to try and make her, I don't know if they're trying to make her a soldier or some kind of weapon, but yeah, they're definitely tinkering around and stuff, and you can tell when it kind of goes haywire. There's a lot of little cameos in the movie that weren't even anything in the series, but you can see a lot of the same people that Joss Whedon used in former stuff and stuff he uses later on. So it feels like a Joss Whedon film.
Absolutely, and that's one of the more beloved things about the Firefly and Serenity franchise is this was best Joss Whedon. Like, Joss Whedon, of course, went on to direct the first Avengers and Age of Ultron and help with some other DC ones, and that didn't really turn out so well. However, this is the best Joss Whedon, in my opinion, the best written. Like, everybody has a different kind of dialogue, and I think really the characters and the way people talk and the cadence in which they talk, it's just so flavorful, and that's what kind of separates this franchise from one that's kind of similar in like a Farscape. Like, Farscape is a ton of fun, and it's Star Wars with Muppets. I guess Star Wars has Muppets in it too, but Farscape is literally kind of like that's its shtick. There's a lot of creature effects and whatnot, and Farscape is fantastic. If you haven't seen it, or anyone that's watching this hasn't seen it, I definitely recommend it. But something like what makes Firefly so special is just that it like you said at the beginning, Drew, it feels like a Western, because even Mal, he's got a 6-shooter, he's got like a long dust coat, they call themselves brown coats, that's what they wore in the war, but everyone has that kind of, it's in the future, but since they're kind of frontiersmen and they're all starting over in this new galaxy, everything feels like the Wild Wild West.
They hit on a couple of tropes, but they do them in a pretty good way. And like you said, with the budget of this, the look of it versus Firefly, just everything's just crisper. You can definitely tell they had more money to spend on lighting and stuff. But the ship still looks the same. It just looks shiny, I guess you could say, which is a term they use. It's funny you're talking about how they're like just how they talk and everything. And this wasn't the first time I remember it happening. I think the first time I remember this device being used was in Battlestar Galactica, where they just kind of make up their own curse words so they can say them on TV, because it's not a real word. It's
right?
Not,
yeah,
you can't not say it. And was it Goram? Is the main one. There's a couple other ones, and they just randomly speak in Chinese sometimes to get away with other stuff. I think it's credited Joss Whedon putting that in one of the Alien movies. He helped them, but didn't quite finish. But he brought it over into this, and I don't know, I just got a kick out of that, where they would just have their own cuss words, and they just say it whenever they want to, and it's great.
and you mentioned budget, Drew. This thing had a budget of $39 million, and this was, I think it went to Universal finally, was where it got distribution from, because, of course, like, this is like all of the Whedon's baby, because it was not just Joss Whedon. Jed Whedon would do a lot of the writing, his brother, and a lot of the directing for the series. So this was definitely a passion project for all the Whedons. And so when Joss was initially trying to revive the series when it got canceled from Fox, he was going from place to place, and he was just like, listen, it doesn't have to be a giant blockbuster. I'm not trying to make the next Star Wars or anything. I just but I don't want to have it be a sci-fi movie either. Give me a little bit of a budget. He even found ways to kind of shave off over 60% of the budget, so they wound up settling on $39 million, which for a sci-fi film, especially one with this effects heavy, that's incredible. The problem is that it only made, even with all the fanfare and all the the DVD sales and everything from Firefly, and the studio feeling really good about the investment, it only had about a $40 million return. So it basically just made its money back. And in Hollywood, with all the money you're spending on advertising and everything, that is a huge loss. So I think that everyone felt like this was going to be a no-brainer hit, and maybe just the brown coats rather, wound up showing up, and it wasn't enough to pull in new viewers, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you know that budget I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot today for, like I said, all the summer blockbusters, but that's a pretty good budget for most movies around 2005.
Sure.
And you know, it had a lot of the same problem of was it Watchmen? It came out a couple years after that. You know, it had good source material. People were really behind it, and the opening night they were out in force, but then it just like off a cliff.
Right.
But you know, this one, it quote made its money back, but the studio gets like half those dollars, and like all the different theaters and other people get their chunk. So yeah, it definitely wasn't a commercial success out the gate.
Yeah, and it's very disappointing. And they already had, you know, Joss and everyone involved, the writers, they already had this with a couple of sequels in mind, which never came to fruition and probably will never come to fruition because of how kind of much it flopped. And like I said, on paper, it does look like it made its money back with a tiny bit more, but it's just not the case because, like you said, Drew, studio takes the money with advertising and actually winds up losing quite a bit. I think the rule of thumb is you have to make 6 times your budget to actually make a profit for every movie that you make, and this definitely did not do that. It starts off with a big focus on River and Simon and them coming back on board, and then we get introduced to kind of the big bad of this film, and which I mean, this is a serious actor. I love him from Red Belt is the first time I saw this actor, and then, you know, you would go on to be Mordo, Mordo from Doctor Strange, and I mean, I feel like he's in a lot of stuff. Great villain for this film. He is equal parts just menacing, likable. He's very likable, where you could almost see where he's coming from a lot of the times. Which is a tall order, because to go against such a beloved crew with such a huge fan base, they sure did knock it out of the park with their villain.
Yeah, he's also very polite.
Yeah.
Which is kind of it's kind of unsettling. It's like, why are you being so polite? And then he stabs somebody with a sword. So, but yeah, he gets that to kind of relate it to the newest thing. Now he reminds me of Thanos from Infinity War.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, he believes he is right, and he's going to do everything he can to accomplish his goal, and it's really hard to stop somebody like that, especially when, you know, he's obviously trained and all that. But yeah, he's really, really good villain.
Yeah, he's talking to you like calmly, like a soothing voice, while he's literally paralyzing you with these like pressure point touches, and then, like you said, he just puts his blade out, so you just gradually fall on your own blade like a samurai. He's just so good in this role. And then you even have the Michael Hitchcock, who's a great kind of he always plays like the dad or like a bad, like, evil professor in a lot of stuff, as Dr. Matthias, who's kind of in the beginning of this, and it's just like, oh, you know, it almost sets him up to be kind of a big bad, but he's wiped out very quickly in this film.
Yeah, it shows him in the flashback of Simon rescuing River. You know, you think he's Alliance, he's a big doctor, he's going to be in this, and all of a sudden, just like, bam, he's gone.
He's so badass, he doesn't even have a name. He's just the operative. He works for basically like the Empire, right? So, and he's kind of the company man. He doesn't ask questions, but he does feel like a very strong moral code to this cause, whether it be right or wrong. He even says so much later on in the film, talking to Mal, where he's just like, you know, I will run through women, children, you know, everybody, if it's the right thing, if I believe it's the right thing to do. So that's where he's so scary, is his zealotry, and it works so well. Another kind of a backdrop bad guy, another villain of this, is a holdover, and it's not just a singular person or villain, but it's a group of people, and I so love that they kind of went somewhere with this, because I always felt like they were such a force in Firefly, the TV show, and that's the Reavers. Drew, tell us a little bit about the Reavers.
Well, like you said, in the TV show, there's not a lot of payoff on it. You hear them talked about like the boogeyman. There's one person they bring on that survived an attack from them, and then he turns himself into one, kind of. So it's, but like you still never see what they're going to do. You just hear all the stories like, oh, they're going to eat you alive. What was it? Zoe says they're going to rape us to death, eat us, and then do something else. And she says, and hopefully in that order, because like a lot of times they would eat you first while you're still alive.
Right.
So yeah, they were very just menacing entity out there in this universe. And I'm like you, I was really glad they used them a lot more. It was even just in the little flashes that Summer, who's always just kind of there but not there. Like she'll hear something or see something that's not there. It's just in her head, and it'll usually be a Reaver, and it's just those little jump scares, and then it kind of pays off towards the end of the film. But definitely, I was really glad to see them put that to use, because you could tell that Whedon didn't get a chance to do what he wanted to in the series because he was saving it. You know, he didn't want to use them too much early on. He wanted to save it so it had more impact, and then that gets canceled after one season. So
yeah. And he even said as much where after Serenity was made, he said that a lot of the storyline for the movie was going to be stretched out over season 2. So that's when, like you said, we were going to get a lot of, no pun intended, but the Reavers fleshed out a lot more. Right? I'm here all week.
Nice.
But yeah, the Reavers, like when they do, what makes them so effective is they're just that inevitable force. They're the equivalent to basically like zombies, but they're a little bit more organized and militarized, if that's a word, than just your brainless, Walking Dead zombies, where they are competent enough to drive ships and kind of organize themselves to get from point A to point B. But once they're kind of unleashed on, once they see fresh meat, basically, they just completely lose it. And what makes them so effective is the restraint that Joss Whedon shows while utilizing them. We see, whenever we see the Reavers, we see their ships are always like derelict ships, kind of taken over from other people, whether they're like Federation ships or whatnot, and then they dress them with bones. They just look really like, kind of like witch doctor-y. But then when you get to see them, they're, aside from the jump scares, but those are so fast, you get to see like a flash of their face or whatever, just like a maw kind of biting at you. They're just like these, they're just like dressed in furs. And that's another thing where Joss kind of shaved off the budget, because a lot of the things where they're just like, this is going to be a heavy effects portion or scene, especially with like the Reavers, they had to figure it out where it was mostly practical to cut budget a little bit more. And that was one thing that they did with the Reavers, where I think there's only like at the end there's really some zoom ins when River's kind of fighting a whole mass of them. But besides that, they're always constantly moving. You can never really see a clear shot, because probably they're going to look like, Halloween zombies. So it was very effective with how he shot them. Yeah,
there's just a couple like stop frames where you'd actually want like a couple of the faces that they did really good job with the makeup. Like one guy had his lips missing and half his face was gone, but most of them was just like you said, it was just like probably just regular makeup, very quickly done, and it's just like flash go. Was there anything from watching if you watch in the opposite order of me, which you watched the series first and then the movie, was there anything that you think you wouldn't have gotten as much if you had just watched the movie and never seen the series?
I think it made like Book's appearance a little bit more meaningful. Shepard Book, who's played by Ron Glass, because he is a huge part of the series. And also, I think the small kind of teasing of the Reavers made it that much more gratifying to see them show up in a larger way in the show, or in the movie rather, and then just getting to see a little bit of Rivers' progression throughout the show kind of pays it off a little bit more watching it that way. Did you feel that way watching it in the reverse?
Yeah, like I said, when I rewatched Serenity this week to kind of brush up on it, the thing that kind of stuck out to me was the relationship with Mal and Inara, which, it's like most people won't get this reference, but it's like moonlighting, the tension between, Sybil Shepherd and Bruce Willis. Like they hate each other, but you can tell they want to be with each other.
Absolutely.
but like when the movie starts off, she's not on the ship with him. She's on the ship with him for the entire series, and they're just arguing all the time. And it's just all the tension and all the back and forth and just cutting each other down. And then the only way they tie it together is when the operative goes to where she's at and gets her to send him a message to come help. Not say, "Oh, I'm being held hostage." Like, "Oh, can you come help me with something?" And then as soon as Mal gets off the message, and of course other people are watching on the other end of the ship, he comes up and Zoe goes, "Trap." He goes, "Trap." And he's like, "So we're going to go in there anyway." And they're like, "How do you know she just didn't call because she missed us?" And he goes, "You watched it?" And they go, "Yeah." It's like, "Did you see us fighting?" And they go, "No." He goes, "Trap."
Trap. Yeah.
So, like, it's a trap. So.
Yeah, and it definitely sets that up, their relationship, because I don't even think it really mentions why they're kind of apart, but in the show it does take its time to kind of flesh that relationship out, where she is basically runs a brothel, and she is kind of the main madam, and she participates as well, and that he kind of just wanted more of a monogamous relationship, and she's a career woman, and that's why there was always tensions flaring that way, which that definitely played out a lot more during the show. So in the movie, I think they could have showed a little bit more of that, as far as like if you're a brand new person. Because thinking about it now, like watching the movie, especially when I just watched it like last night to really get it fresh in my mind, I was just like trying to watch it through a lens of someone that knew nothing of Firefly whatsoever. And I have to admit, I would feel pretty confused in a lot of characters, even like someone like Kaylee, where she has a little bit more character development, the engineer, and in the movie with no context at all, she's just like this kind of like hard up female that's just hitting on the doctor all the time. But there is more time to kind of let that relationship and her character breathe if you did watch the show first. So that might be why it didn't get the kind of foothold with a newer audience.
Yeah, it was I also got the feel where like they were kind of expecting you to have seen the series at some point,
right,
to get some of the character development, because they just don't have the time. Like it clocks in like just under 2 hours, I think, like an hour 50 something. And like they just don't have time to flesh out 8 main characters and have a story that means anything. Like another one that kind of suffers from that is Jane, who is like, he's the muscle that they brought on the crew. They actually hired him away from people that were trying to rob them because they offered him more, but he is like really like backstabbing in the series. Like he actually tries to turn in Simon and River on one episode. It goes south, and he winds up feeling sorry about it later. But like from the movie, you don't get quite that much feeling that he could turn on you if it just really fit him for that moment. He's seems a little bit more loyal, which I guess he did have a turn to that later on in the series. But yeah, it's like some of the real key character development just didn't make it through. Yeah, where Jane just kind of comes off as like kind of just the lovable kind of adult in the movie, but with all that backstory, like you said, in the show, it does make a lot of more sense. Where in the beginning, where the Reavers first show up and they jump on a thing, and this one guy from this planet is just trying to jump on their hovercraft to get back to the Serenity, and he kicks, and Malcolm kicks him off. Zoe looks at him, looks at Mal, and she's just like, how could you do that? Basically, he's just like, well, I would have taken extra weight, and what if I, was I supposed to throw you off? And then she's like, well, what about Jane? He's like, oh shit, what about Jane? I love that. But that makes sense. Like he comes off as really mean and cold with no context in the movie, but knowing how much Jane has tried to double cross and triple cross him, that comment makes a lot of sense. And that's another thing. Malcolm Reynolds is very much a Han Solo shooting first, and I mean he's not the fixed Han Solo with Greedo taking the shot first. Mal will straight up murder people. Like he murders someone. I mean, the guy was getting eaten, so it was a mercy kill, but he'll just straight up murder like any opposition. Or he even states at one point when one of his this community gets wiped out, where he's just like, if you guys aren't with me, I will shoot you down. And he's literally talking to his entire crew. And the thing is, he comes off a lot I don't want to say meaner, but like when you watch the show, he has that same mentality throughout the whole show, but you realize that he's still got his people's back, and he'll make a plan that to two of the people might seem crazy. It's like he's trying to, just get rid of us or whatever, but he's actually got a plan that just involves his crew. He's just trying to take care of his family, and sometimes it comes off as just, like I said, really merciless.
Yeah.
But then it comes out and it's like, oh, you weren't really trying to kill us. He's like, no. But some of the moments in the movie, that doesn't come through as much. He really, you really don't know if he would just shoot this person for no reason, even though he has obviously cares about everybody on the ship.
Absolutely. And we kind of talked about things that didn't get enough time to breathe and not enough context. But the thing that did work really well in Serenity as a standalone movie is the main plot through line, where they're like I said, they were going from kind of place to place, doing the normal stuff, but then different from the show, River is just kind of walking, or just hanging with the crew, but then going completely like John Wick on people, and with no, seemingly with no provoking. It's just like they go to collect on one of the jobs that they did, and then she just goes and takes out everyone. And what you're seeing is the Federation are putting these like subliminal messages in these transmissions, and it's triggering something, and then you see for the first time that her brother actually has like a safe word, and he just like says a word, and then she falls down and passes out. But she does, like, Summer Glau does a hell of a job in Serenity. She does a great job in Firefly too, but she is so, like, she's tortured, and she really, I think going against Nathan Fillion's one of my favorite actors of all time, just because he's so cool. He's like the coolest of the cools, but Summer Glau does a hell of a job acting like as a 17-year-old tortured girl in this.
Yeah, and it's another one of those cases, like kind of like with the Reavers, but not the same, where in the series you don't get to see any of that. Like, she's just this broken 17-year-old girl that like talks to herself sometimes and hears voices. And there's like one scene, and they reference it in the movie, where she takes the gun from Kaylee, because Kaylee's like cowered down and can't do anything. She's just frozen. And Summer just like looks up, sees three people, closes her eyes, and just like smokes them all. Just bam. And that's the only thing in the series that gives you any indication that she's got some kind of training or some kind of something going on there. And then in this movie, like you said, they go to the pickup, and she just takes out an entire bar of people, kills some of them, just like throw some of them against the wall. And it was the really good payoff. Like I said, I wish the series could have went on where you had a little bit more of it. Like you said, it would have been drawn out more over a season or two. But the fact that they had it at all was really good to see, because like watching the series after the movie, and like every episode she does nothing. Like, she just is crazy. And you're just like, she's just going to sit there and mumble like every episode. So it was glad to see her actually get into that character.
Yeah. And then, the rest of the movie kind of plays out as they're going from place to place, and then now the operative is following them and kind of wiping out everything that they touch. So if they had a contact or anyone has given them asylum ever within the show or in the movie or in their history, the operative is there to completely wipe them out. And that is when we get our first huge death, and that's Shepherd Book. Like I said, Shepherd Book is like, if you just watch the film, he just seems like a a wise buddy that lives on a planet, but he was basically a main crew member during all of Firefly. So that's a pretty big death, and that kind of sets the tone for, okay, we are gonna, this actually has some stakes, where it's not just a TV show where it's kind of villain of the week, or very episodic, where we're gonna get in this this tangled mess, and then we're gonna figure it out, and everyone's gonna high five and freeze frame. No, this is Shepherd Book's gets killed, and that's a huge death. So there is definite stakes in this. Things ensue, and they find out that they just kind of unlocking more of River's memory. They find out they need to go to this planet of Miranda, and that's basically where they find out, where we get most of the origins for the Reavers.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, the outer rim where they normally stay is where the Reavers kind of are at, but they're a little bit farther past where they normally went in the show. and then that planet Miranda that somehow River just has under her head. She just knows it's there because I guess she uncovered it when she was with the Alliance or whatever. And it's like there's this area. It's like the no-fly zone. That's where just Reavers just hang out and chill and do whatever. And then like the planet's on the other side of that. So Mal gets this after Shepard Book dies. There's a bunch of dead bodies hanging around. And he saw it. Yeah, just tied him to the front of the ship, and everybody looks at him like, "What?
Yeah.
Why would we do that?
These are men, women, and children."
Yeah, and it's like, these are dead. Why are we going to desecrate these dead bodies? And he's like, just do it. Because he's got a plan. He's not sharing it with everybody because he's the captain. And he's like, I've got a plan. Just let's go.
Yeah.
And he tells Kaylee to, like, make the core looks like it's leaking, but we're not, like, all going to die, something like that. They basically junk the ship up a lot. And it's I think it was something they did in one of the first one or two episodes of Walking Dead where they just, pour blood on them and make themselves look like zombies, and they just kind of shamble through the zombies. And
yeah,
perfect
comparison. Yeah,
and that's basically the plan they have. They just kind of slowly fly through all the Reaver ships to get to the planet, just looking like a Reaver ship.
Yep,
and it works. So.
Yeah, and then they're walking around this planet, which looks very stringent at first, but this actually, Miranda was actually shot at a high school. They shut down a high school. It was this like brand new high school, high tech, and that's where they shot all the Miranda scenes, which is pretty brutal because if you've seen it or if you're gonna watch it, then you know that there's this like a ton of like dead bodies, like zombified bodies everywhere. So I could just imagine, if you actually were a high schooler and you went to school and then watch this movie, you're like, oh crap, I don't want to go to Photo Lab after seeing that film. But they go and they find out that basically what the Alliance was covering up and why they're trying to recapture Rivers is because they were the ones that created. First off, they did a mass planet-wide genocide on Miranda because they introduced this. It was supposed to take away aggression or some shit, and it wound up not only killing 90% of the population, but it was like such a weird, like horrible death where it made everyone just not care about like eating or sitting down. They just, whatever they were doing, they just like stood there until they died. Because they were just like looking around. They're just like, these aren't even like, you don't see any wounds. You don't see anything. People are just in their car or at the office because they literally, once they released this chemical or whatever it was, they just literally died with whatever they were doing. And then with the 10% that this didn't happen to, created these cannibal creatures called the Reavers, and you get to see Sarah Paulson, who's now, like, maybe back in 2005 wasn't so much of a household name, but she was probably one of the bigger stars now that you look at it. Being in American Horror Story and all those, and she's been in so many films since then. But it was weird seeing Sarah Paulson just there as a doctor in a holograph. Explaining the creation, the origin of the Reavers.
Yeah, like when I watched it the other day, I didn't know she was in the movie. Like I completely forgot because when I watched it the first time, however long ago, she wasn't a big name. Like like she was an actress, you might have seen her or something. But I was like, hey, that's Sarah Paulson, and it's I think they said it was like a planet of like 30 million people or something, and they all died except for, like I said, like the 10%, which that means there's 3 million Reavers. That's a lot of crazy, ravenous zombie guys running around. But yeah, like they looked in one of the offices and like all the bodies were kind of preserved. It has been like 12 years or something because they said it sealed itself off. And like people just like literally just laying down. Like these corpses just laid down and died because they just didn't care about eating or sleeping or anything. They just like, I'm good.
I like the one that was like straight up pressed against the glass, like right behind Kaylee.
Oh yeah, that's like don't, and then she turned and just screams.
It's this face smashed against glass because that's where he just decided to die. But they wind up escaping. But while they're escaping, they knew that the operative and his forces were going to be waiting for them at whatever planet. Because they wanted to kind of tell everyone. They wanted to tell everyone that the Alliance was the one that created the Reavers and that they are kind of like the evil empire. So they knew the operative was going to be kind of intercepting them. So through this, like, I guess, jumps, like, light speed wormhole thing, they not only, outspat the Serenity, but that's where all the Reavers kind of followed them as well. Yeah,
they, I think they had one cannon on top of the ship. They didn't have any other weapons, and, like, So Mal's out there, and they get about halfway through the Reavers, and all of a sudden he's like, just get cleared, and he's like, now, and they just start shooting at one of them, and they all just go. It's like dogs just chasing a cat.
Yep.
So they get there, and like you said, the operative is like, yeah, take aim at him. This isn't like, this is how it should be. We should be fighting like men, not, you know, shooting them out of the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And about the time they take aim at him, like you said, it's like just tons of huge ships coming at him. There's like, no, target the Reavers. Everybody shoot something now. Why are you not shooting something?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and that was another kind of a not bigger star, but somebody you recognize is David Krumholtz. He's been in everything from the Santa Claus to Mom. He was Mr. Universe.
Yeah.
And yeah, because that's another thing. They call him to say they want to send out the signal, and he's like, yeah, I'd love to do it. And he's like way too cheery because he's never that cheery.
Right.
And you can, of course, then it pans back, and of course the operative guys all around him, and then he just stabs him.
Yeah.
So you know he's dead before they get there. But yeah, them just being able to make it through all that because they bring the Reavers with them, and the landing was probably one of the better parts of the whole movie.
Yeah, it was great. And also David Krumholtz had a Austin Powers fembot with him the whole time, which was kind of weird. But yeah, that landing, as you alluded to, of course, was probably set up the scene where people had the most outrage. And
I'm a leaf on the wind.
Oh, I'm a leaf on the wind. And now that I know why, because you know I really ran into him, like, why do you do this? He's like such a beloved character, and that's Wash. Wash gets it became a meme in 2005. It was like one of the first memes. Wash got washed. Like when someone says, "Oh, that person got washed," means they're an important person that died in a non-climactic way, and you know. Alan Tudyk is everything. Alan Tudyk is so incredible. Talk about a guy and an actor that's gone on to do incredible things. He's such a fantastic voice actor. You see him or you hear him in Wreck-It Ralph and all these giant Disney films and all this other stuff. He used to do a lot more on camera. Now he's kind of found a second wind like Mark Hamill as a voice actor. And he's fabulous. But he goes out like a chump, and I hate that part, and everyone hates it. However. Yeah. Looking into it, they said basically Joss Whedon said that Ron Glass, who is Shepherd Book, and Alan Tudyk would not sign on for a sequel, so that's why they kind of got washed right out of this movie.
That makes a lot more sense, but still, it's just so like they go like he goes through everything, sticks the landing, sliding through this tunnel. One of the engines gets ripped off, and they barely like it's turned around. They barely come to a stop before they like. Tilt off an edge or into a wall or something, and then they're like, okay, we gotta go, and it's just boom through the window, just a big metal spear like right through his chest.
Yeah.
And then he's married to Zoe in the show, and she's like, come on baby, we gotta get out of here. And I was like, he's not coming. No. We gotta go. He's like, she hasn't figured it out yet. He's not getting out of that chair.
Nope.
But it was pretty bad.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was effective though, right? It was just like, you know, that big death. Book was the big death, and wow, I can't believe they killed someone off, and then killing someone like Wash was just like heart wrenching, and it's so fast, and you don't even have to like you're like Zoe, you know, it's just like, oh shit, no, he's fine, like it's Wash, he's gonna get up and they're gonna go. Nope, he's totally gone, and that is awful, and that sets up our kind of finale. Between we get the one-on-one, you know, the main event is Mal versus the operative, which is fantastic. All the fight choreography in this film is so good. What it lacks in, you know, looking at it now, especially with my stupid like movie critic eyes, of course I could see the seams and be like, oh, that didn't look as good as this, or you know, that CGI doesn't really hold up, but what does hold up is the practical effects and the fight choreography, because the battle, which it's very dark, but it looks very much like Doom rather, and it's basically the rest of the crew and the Reavers kind of going at it while Mal and the operative are going at it, and that is just, I mean, it's a tension filled third act for sure. Oh yeah, and watching it today, I'm like, okay, so he was still on the ship. He got away in an escape pod when I'm talking about the operative. When the Reavers blew up his ship, he got an escape pod like right before it blows, and he's going down the planet.
and this planet is huge. Like, it's an Earth-sized planet.
Yeah.
And okay, like Serenity's going to like, well, I guess it might not be Earth-sized planet because it's like where Mr. Universe is. So they're going where his place is, and they're where it's at. He's in this little pod, and somehow he winds up in the same place they are, like minutes after. And like they were falling so fast because they would lost power.
Right.
And then they just slide in, and somehow he gets like, so Mal gets sued, like they're holding him off. So Mal can go put the message through, and he gets into the room, and like I said, it's the fembot, and the Mr. Universe is like laying in her lap, and he's dead. His eyes are like glazed over. He's out. He's gone. And she goes, Mal, they killed me, Mal. You know, he basically told her something to repeat.
Yeah.
Because they trashed all his equipment to send the signal out, and he's like, I've got a backup, and it's here, and they wouldn't have checked for it. Go send it out. The signal you can't stop the signal. That was his catchphrase that he said like 3 times. But, so, Mal's like, okay, I know where that's at. So he's going to go down there. And then it shows more Reaver in battle with the rest of the crew. And then the operative shows up, and of course, Fembot just says the same line to him, even though it's not Mal. She just repeats it.
Right.
And then somehow he gets to where Mal is without ever seeing the rest of the crew. Like within 20 seconds, then Mal gets down there.
Of course.
But then, like you said, after that, the fight choreography is really good. You got like hanging from chains, and it looks like American Gladiators going across the what was it, what do we call it in school? The playground where you got to go across the
monkey bars, yeah.
Monkey bars, yeah.
Yeah.
And then then he starts like trying to do the nerve attack. It's a great fight scene, really good.
Yeah, it almost felt a little reminiscent to like Return of the King, where there's this giant battle, but then Viggo Mortensen has the cheat code and basically just brings in all the ghosts and wipes out everyone. It's like, oh, we should have done this the whole time. Where it was just like, people like Zoe gets her spine almost chopped open.
Slashed.
Kaylee gets poison darted in the neck. Simon gets shot. We think he's dead, and then Rivers just like, oh, it's my turn to take care of you, Simon, and then just literally goes out and takes out all of the Reavers with just like melee weapons, which is cool. I mean, sweet, but like, hey girl, you want to hook a brother up a little bit before people get
No, but it's just like, the doctor, he's got his doctor's bag, and he's going to try and help. Right. All of a sudden they have to back up, and he's like, oh, I forgot my bag. On cue, get shot in the chest through the door opening that's like this big.
Yeah.
Okay. And then he drops, and then, like I said, that's when River goes, oh, it's my turn to take care of you. And so she does like a flip out and grabs the bag, throws it, shuts the door.
Yeah.
And there's like 100 Reavers out there.
Right.
And then, like, next thing you know, like, she just got picked. She's killed a couple of them with her hands and picks up, like, an axe and a sword and just goes off on them. And it's great.
Yeah.
Like, it's not John Wick level believable, but it's pretty sweet. Like, she's just going hardcore on everybody.
Yeah. And I mean, Mal gets his pretty much his teeth kicked in by the operative. I like how the finishing move, basically like in the beginning, where he does the kind of Vulcan death nerve pinch. He on the doctor in the beginning of the movie, he does it on Mal, and then he kind of rushes in for the death blow, and then Mal just plays possum and then overtakes him and then jugs him in the throat and basically says, that nerve cluster that you just tried to paralyze me was moved because of all the damage in the war that I took. And I thought that was such a cool moment. But I mean, once he walks out, I mean, you see he got the shit kicked out of him. His eyes, like he's got
so bad.
That red bloody eye effect that I hate when they do that in
all
movies.
The blood vessels, and you can still see the colors. Everything is just red.
I got food poisoning once when I there was like a employee dining room at Caesar's Palace when I used to work there, and I got food poisoning from a bad Pepsi that they didn't clean out the machine well enough, and I vomited so hard that I got that, and I had to look at myself in the mirror for like 2 weeks with those eyes. I had nightmares just by looking at myself. I mean, I always get nightmares by looking at myself in the mirror, but specifically those 2 weeks were terrifying. But yeah, again, makeup effects, special effects, practical effects, way better than anything they did with the CGI. But I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it. And I like that he kind of let the operative live, even though the operative kind of wiped out a bunch of his friends and everything, but he kind of sent him on his own way. And I think that, honestly, I think that was more for a setup for like a sequel, maybe like a team up where they were going to get into some, you know, some real deep stuff, and then the operative would kind of be that unlikely ally. So I think that's kind of where he left him alive, because he's just such a great actor and such a cool character too, which I would have loved to see that. Unfortunately, that was not to be. Yeah,
and you know, it also helped him out at the end because, you know, he like I said, he like punches him in the throat, and then he like grabs his arm like Triple H style, but like instead of like, you know, dropping it on him, he looks like he broke both his shoulders, dislocated his arm, something, and then he's like just falls down. Then he leans him up against the thing and takes his sword and like basically, you know, just wedges him in there, like he can't get up.
Yeah,
and then he plays the tape for him because the guy had never seen the tape.
Right.
Yes, he just knew he was supposed to destroy it or stop anybody, and he sees that the side he's on is just wrong.
Right.
You know, because he was they called him a true believer. Like he was totally behind the cause. He thought it was the right thing to do, and that's what gave him that drive and made him almost unstoppable. And all of a sudden he sees like, oh, we're the baddies. You know, it's a Hogan's Hero moment. You know, it's like, oh, are we the baddies? And he's like, yeah, apparently we are. And so he leaves him alive, and Mal makes it down to the rest of the crew, and like then the door opens up, and Summer's standing there with like literal blood ripping off an axe and her sword, and she's still got that crazy look in her eye.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, we should let her loose a long time ago in this sequel, because there's like just bodies everywhere. And then when they're like, okay, Summer, it's okay. And then about that time, the wall blows out, and it's all the Alliance soldiers come popping in, and like, you know, Summer's like, okay, I'm going to kill all these fools too, but there's like 20 guns on her, so that's probably not going to happen.
Right.
And then they're like, do we have the kill order, sir? Like, we've got him in sight. Do we have the order? Can we shoot him? And then by the time the video's finished playing, it's been played out throughout the entire universe that everybody's seen, and he's like, stand down, we're good here.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and it was so, you know, I'm not sure what he's going for with that, but like I said, I think possibly making the team up sequel and giving it a good reason for them to be able to get past the Alliance, because the boss man said it's all right. So yeah, it's pretty good moment though.
Yeah, and I think it would have set up because you never get to see kind of the main kind of the emperor of the Alliance, you know, and I think that was on purpose. I think they were going to save him. You know, the operative was basically Darth Vader, where we never got to see the emperor, and I think that's what they were probably going to try to set up for. But you mentioned a little bit ago with the blood just dripping off the axe, and the jump scares and everything, and I love that they let Joss Whedon, or not let him, because this is like his baby, right? I love that Joss Whedon wasn't afraid to use his horror chops, because I mean, he didn't direct Cabin in the Woods, but he did, you know, Drew Goddard did, but he did pretty much everything else. He wrote the film. He produced the film. You know, Joss Whedon is a very underrated horror genre person, you know, a filmmaker, and there are some definite moments of horror in this film. Just even the way that those bodies looked, the attention to detail, and how great the bodies looked, and the kills and all that. He really went for it with the more unnerving and unsettling moments of this film, which I loved as well. But yeah, I mean, seeing Serenity the first time I saw it, I don't think, and I think a lot of people that watched the series first felt this way, and that was, I didn't think, they could have put a perfect movie in front of me, and nothing could have lived up to the hype of having the closure to this poor, ill-fated, much-beloved TV series that was Firefly. And when I saw Serenity the first time, I was like, that was really cool, and I really appreciate you know, being able to jump on the crew again and go on some adventures, and the brutality of it and whatnot was fantastic. But I was just like, yeah, but now it's over, and I don't feel satisfied. So I was, you know, really hoping for more. Watching it again now, and watching a couple times since, which I have because I love this movie so much now, it's really grown on me and really has me accepting the fact that this is the bookend. This was the closure that I wanted, and that's the only one that we're gonna get for the series and this cast of characters. So all in all, I definitely recommend watching this film if you haven't, and I definitely recommend watching Firefly. Yeah,
like I said, the series is like 14 episodes. It was an hour show on TV, which equates to like 44 minutes of show an episode. So, I mean, when you think about that they had planned this for like probably 2 or 3 seasons at least. And like, oh, we've got to jam this in into like 2 hours. So we get like 2 episodes to jam in about 20 episodes worth of stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why a lot of the, it's a TV show and, oh, let's make a movie. Like, they don't translate anywhere near as well as this one did. I think, like, considering what they had to do, it was a very good job. And like I said, it's also, I watched it first without ever seeing the series, and it was fine. Like, it stood alone just by itself. So, considering what he was up against and what he had to work with, it was as good a job as could be expected. And this is a movie I like to watch. So.
Absolutely. So again, we both recommend this film. It is much beloved and much beloved series as a whole. So that is our episode of Cult of Films. Drew Bentley, thank you so much for joining me and talking Serenity and Firefly and all things shiny. Where can everyone find you, sir?
Well, you can pretty much, I do have a YouTube channel that has videos on it. They're all pretty old. It's Quad Nines. And then I'm on Twitter at Quad Nines. It's all spelled out. I think my YouTube channel has the number 9 instead of the word. But basically I'm talking movies. I play Magic the Gathering on occasion. Not that I get a chance to much anymore, but I like to do stuff like that. But yeah, basically movies and games. So I'm always around.
Perfect. Thanks again for joining. And that was the last thing that I wanted to mention is, I met Drew basically through Magic because of the other content on this channel. But that was another thing that really drew me in because this felt like, we just got the Magic the Gathering series, animated series on Netflix was announced recently. And before that, I never thought, The Dark Tower I didn't think was ever going to happen, and unfortunately it did because that movie is hot garbage, especially reading all those books and how beloved they are. Oh, man, they really screwed that up. You'll never see a Cult of Films from me on that, on the Dark Tower film. But this felt to me like, even though it was sci-fi and, Magic is more of a fantasy setting, it felt like this was my Weatherlight, and only Magic people are gonna get that reference. But this felt like the cast and crew and I was watching the Weatherlight, and they were going against, Wrath and all this, and that's why I think it resonates so well to just kind of genre fans in general. If you're a fantasy genre fan or a sci-fi genre fan, it really does, just like I said, just has this, and it's just different enough with the different kind of dialogue and the humor involved and the setting of kind of being a Western as well. It just hits all these marks, and on paper it shouldn't. It just looks like a big hodgepodge of genres, but it comes together so beautifully, and that's why it is so beloved. But you could find me on this very channel doing this very show, The Cult of Films, and the channel's called They Said, We Said. You could listen to this on podcast form. You could also check out the other big movie show we do on here, Director's Cut, with my co-host Jason Alt, and the other various Magic the Gathering episode or shows as well. If you want to follow me personally, go ahead and do so on Twitter at OrzovDunn. And until next time, audience, we'll see you at the movies. Go watch more cult films.